It feels like we've all been complicit in this idea of we're not going out and people dancing on Saturday nights and how people used to really go out and interact. All of that required physical participation. Now we're like islands of one. What's getting sacrificed here? Our social lives.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of SPARTAN Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course, with insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today. USANA is the official nutritional partner of Spartan and prides itself on providing its high-quality nutritional products to elite and professional athletes around the world. From its award-winning supplements to athletic endorsements, USANA has proven for over 30 years why it's a company you can trust. Shop its products at usana.com.
Joe De Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan and the Hard Way podcast. I've got a good one for you today. Andrea Miller, CEO and founder of YourTango, relational wellness. She is going to help us communicate better. She's going to help us figure out our communities. What are you going to help us do today? Tell me. Tell us.
I'm going to help you and your amazing listeners and viewers foster the human connection.
Yeah, so we're beings that like to communicate with others and like to connect with others. So what's getting in the way? Like, why do we need help?
All right, I promise I'm going to answer that, but I first want to give a shout out, Joe, to you and your team and your show, which I love. And your whole purpose of overcoming obstacles is something that I relate to as a mom, as a CEO, as an author, and in the many, many roles that I wear. And I think it's a really, really important one. So I'm so thankful to be on your show today to talk specifically. I mean, to tie that back to the question you asked me. In my experience, and I've coached a lot of people, I've been a CEO and in the relationship space for a couple decades through my book and the publishing business that I founded. I would say one of the biggest problems we have and why I'm so passionate about relational wellness and why people need help fostering the human connection. First of all, I would say, and it's not a very popular answer, I would say we are our obstacles, right? How many of us are judgmental? How many of us are impatient? How many of us, what I call the weapon of mass distraction? How many of us, oh, hi, Joe. Oh, yeah, what was that? I mean, we're totally distracted, right? We're working too much. I mean, we're a nation of consumers. I love America and I'm grateful to be an American and I'm a capitalist. But I also feel like what's happened in our country is that we have become consumers of a whole lot of social media and technology, Netflix and chill, and all of that shopping and all of these things, alcohol, you name it, all of these things in moderation are phenomenal. Who doesn't like a nice glass of wine and a great movie? My observation is that we have become consumers to our detriment, and that is causing us to feel profoundly isolated. Our Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, has proclaimed that we are in a loneliness epidemic. It's real, right? And I think we've all seen these deaths of despair. There's a mental health crisis occurring that has been exacerbated by the pandemic. So there is a lot out there that is saying the kids and the moms and the dads and the people without kids and you name it, for the most part, they're not okay, right? I mean, the number of, I think it was 20 years ago, on average, people had 5 friends. Now it's an average of 1 or 2. And I might be getting the stats wrong. I'm sure I am. But I just reference them, that kind of statistic. What we can see is that the amount of time we're spending on our social lives and the quality of our social lives has taken a nosedive. And what has the price that we're paying as a society is profound. It is really, really, really hurting people. And so that's what I'm on a mission. I talk about being on helping lead a movement to improve relational wellness.
It would be your job would be so easy. That's awesome. And thanks for the thank you. But your job would be so easy if we just got rid of the devices, because if I think back to my youth when I was growing up, we had to have friends because what else would we do? We didn't have all these other, as you say, distractions, right? I had to go outside. I had to go ring somebody's doorbell. I had to figure out a way, who can I hang out with today? And you build relationships, but that you don't need to do any of that anymore.
Correct. And not only as a 13-year-old, my boys are 10 and 13, and I was thinking about them and the obstacle I put in their way as they're the first time as 10 and 13-year-olds, they went to a 3.5-week sleepaway camp up in the woods of Maine. And I felt a little bad. I thought, oh God, these kids are going to get tortured, but it's an electronics-free camp. I said, this is what they need. They need independence from their parents. We love and adore them, but for them to feel that they can get by and even thrive without us, to me, is one of my jobs as a mother. And for them to experience that they can thrive without devices is also my job as a mother. So I agree with the 10 and 13-year-olds and the younger kids, but I would say as adults, I think we're all pretty guilty of it too, right? And I would also contend with cell phones and, hey, I'm running late, or geez, I decided to cancel at the last minute, oh, it's okay, because everybody has a phone in their pocket, right? I think it has caused people to, even adults, to change their social behavior. And it feels like we've all been complicit in this idea of we're not going out and, oh gosh, you watch some of these older movies with people dancing on Saturday nights and how people used to really go out and interact. And if you're going back even further in time, sit around a fire and tell stories, right? All of that required physical participation. Now, we're like islands of one. We don't even need to go to the grocery store. We can have Fresh Direct or Walmart deliver our groceries, right? So many more people are working from home. So while I agree that the phone is a culprit for the younger set, I would say it's a culprit for the older set. And I think there have been many ways in our modern lives that have caused us to, even working too much and having too many, it's like we're running the kids around and all of these things. What's getting sacrificed here? Our social lives. And what I would say is a decent to great social life isn't a nice to have. It is a need to have. The data is clear. We are biologically wired for love and connection, right? And we can talk more about that. But yeah, I would say, while the weapon of mass distraction is a big one, I would say there are many factors that are causing us to be much more disconnected. And I think we've all been complicit in allowing that to continue to happen in a very insidious way.
It was crazy as I went to Cornell University, and I remember at that stage of my life as a college student, there were places where we gathered together, whether they were bars, restaurants, whatever they were, and that's where you saw people and hopefully found the opposite sex or whatever it is you were looking for. And those places are closed now if I go to Cornell. Like literally the college town is vanished. And
wow.
I wondered, like, what do kids do now? But listening to you just now, it makes perfect sense. They don't need to do that, right? They sit, they order DoorDash, they watch a movie, and they probably never leave their apartment. And that's not,
I think there's a lot of that.
It's not healthy. So
yeah, and the price is high. The price we're paying is high.
I was thinking, why Spartan or Tough Mudder or these brands we have work as I'm listening to you. And it's because we bring, 1.5 million people together every year, grounded in mud and barbed wire and fire. And it probably feels a bit primal, and it feels good because everybody's gotten so far away from that, as you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people crave that. I think people crave connection. Totally. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what do we do? What do you recommend if somebody hasn't read your book? What do you recommend people do?
The good news is I think it's actually pretty easy, and it's hidden. What is it? Simple but not easy, maybe. It's hidden in plain sight. I think the first thing is, I feel like a lot of us will say, hey, when we're at the dinner table, we put this, in the middle or in our pocketbooks, and we have meals together without our devices, right? Joe, let me ask you, when you're eating a meal with your family, do you often sit in front of the TV or look at your phone, or are you guys all tuned into each other?
I'm terrible. I would fail your test.
Put you on the spot.
And I'm not proud of it, and no excuses, but let me tell you the way I think about it, although
but you're not alone is my point. But yes, please go ahead.
When I was growing up, I loved going into a house where they owned a small business. An example would be a tow truck company. And the mom was making sauce and she was radioing and dispatching trucks from the CB radio while she was cooking, while the kids were eating. And I grew up around that and I kind of liked it. I'm not focusing on the detriment, the distraction. I'm focusing on the work ethic, the grind, the fact that the family was working together to put food on the table. And I like that. And so I call it work-life integration. It's gone too far. It's gone way too far. Yeah, I'm not happy about my own situation. Now, if my wife had her way and she could control me and the 4 kids, we would not have our phones. We would sit down and have a proper meal. But it's a mess. It's not happening.
Well, maybe you start small and say just on Sunday nights or just on Tuesday nights or, whatever and you just say, hey, we're going to muddle through it. Something that I've done, I've bought these little, it sounds so dorky, but I bought these little, icebreaker cards. And so my kids and I will die laughing with, it's like these really goofy questions. And some of them are thoughtful. It's like, if you could be anything in the world, what would it be? Or, if you could meet anybody living or dead, who would it be? Some of that, it's like, and some of them are just goofy and fun, right? Because I feel like at times you feel like we know everything about each other. We've told so many stories, but I'll tell you this, Joe. My dad wrote a letter. So my kids are at camp and I asked my dad to write a letter to them or, to write to them. And he wrote the sweetest letter. He told them stories that I'd never even heard of. And I was so touched. I'm sure there are stories in your life that you totally take for granted that your kids would be, eating with a fork and spoon, right? I realize it takes a little more bandwidth from you. And same for me, right? I told my kids that I don't even know what prompted it, but I was a waitress in college at Applebee's. And they're like, well, and then I told them about my ex-boyfriends and they're like, oh my God, it's like you weren't always a mom and you weren't always 50. And so even what I've got embedded in there, if you can't tell, those stories are really how we foster connection, I believe, with our kids, right? And I talk about my failures. I loved your episode. For anybody who hasn't watched Joe's episode with Gordon Kaplan, it is outstanding. Talking about somebody who has come clean and accountability. And I loved, Gordon, if you watch this, a shout out to you and your daughter, how she just said, she was so forgiving. And anyway, there's so much in that episode that I loved. But he also talked about the addiction to achievement. And so when I hear you jokes, I'm a workaholic, I'm a CEO and founder and all these things. And we are so, I feel like he used the phrase addicted to achievement. And it's like it's never enough. And I think for a lot of us out there, whether we're a CEO or we're just striving in our careers, I think if a lot of your viewers watching, I think they're probably nodding their heads going, oh crap, that's me. I'm addicted to achievement. It's never enough. And I feel like we just have to look in that mirror for ourselves, our spouses, our kids, and say, when's enough enough? Right. And I appreciate the work-life integration. Totally get it. But then I think there's a discipline and a rigor, just like a high performance athlete or a high performance CEO that says, I'm going to create a tradition in my family where on Sunday nights, it is electronics free and we tell stories and we watch, or maybe we even watch a movie together, but that's like, oh, okay, that's still, you're getting disintermediated. It just strikes me that it ultimately it's a discipline and I think it's a value that says we need that time to spend together, to get to know each other. And those stories emerge. If we give each other that time and space and that feeling of discomfort, maybe being a little bored, maybe being a little awkward, 9 times out of 10, the stories emerge and the goofy thing emerges, right? But it needs, like I'm a gardener, like a plant, like it needs a little time and space to grow. So I guess what I'd say to you, and I'm going to say to myself, because I'm guilty too of having my device at meals and being distracted with my kids, that it's a discipline, right? It's saying we're going to prioritize this time together, even if it feels a little painful for the first few minutes, because there's always a reward, right? And then the kids take away, you know what? You have shown them that time is important, even if it's not, oh gosh, we were all laughing hysterically, even if we're all kind of annoyed with each other. I think there is something profound that's embedded in that your kids take away, and they're probably not even conscious, and mine too, that says we've prioritized time with each other. We're protecting it. It's sacred. Anyway, those are, and just, again, there are tons more ideas, but I feel like that's an easy one. It just takes some discipline and willpower.
USANA is the official nutritional partner of Spartan and prides itself on providing its high-quality nutritional products to elite and professional athletes around the world. From its award-winning supplements to athletic endorsements, USANA has proven for over 30 years why it's a company you can trust. Shop its products at usana.com.
We put on a death camp, we call it, terrible branding for kids every summer, not far from where you sent your kids in Maine, in Vermont, on our farm. And it takes 2 weeks, and it's absolute torture. We take the kids' phones. They have to eat healthy. They're in cold water every morning at 5:30 a.m., shivering and freezing and working out like crazy people. One year I was feeling nice, and I decided to get them Ben & Jerry's ice cream because we're in Vermont. And we were about 6 or 7 days in. They haven't had their phones. And I put their phones on one table and the ice cream on the other table. I had no intention of creating an experiment. They did not go for the ice cream. They went for the phones. The phones are more addictive than the ice cream.
Oh, Mamma Mia.
Is that unbelievable? The ice cream melted. So the point is, if you're listening to this, these devices are so powerful. They are magnetic and kryptonite at the same time. I'm addicted. We're all addicted to them. So heed our good friend's advice here and figure out a ritual, figure out a way. I got to do it myself to put the damn phone down. I gotta figure out a way.
Yeah. But I feel like somebody like you that's so hardcore, you can do it. You got it. You got that grit.
By the way, one of my dreams, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way, is when I'm driving and I'm going over a big bridge, what would happen if I just threw the phone out the window into the water and never saw it again? How awesome and liberating would that be? And I think about it a lot, but
amen.
I got this damn business, I don't know.
You know what? A phone is what, depending on what fancy version you have, maybe try it. Film it. It could be for your next episode. How long can you go without your phone? Right? It's actually an interesting idea. I think, Joe, we should start a movement for social good to get, like, how long can you go without your phone? Right?
I like that a lot. We can all turn into monks. I threw my son's phone out the apartment window here. I was so pissed at him, but I had no right to be pissed at him because of my own addiction to the phone. And I threw it out the window and it landed in the pool 5 stories down. And I kind of felt bad. I was kind of happy. He was laughing, which was bizarre. He was laughing. And he ran down and the phone was fine. And it continued to work. And I was like, what planet are we?
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
So,
how old is your son?
He's 15. He's 15. He's pretty good.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
To put it in perspective, years ago he wanted a Xbox, and I didn't want to get it. I didn't want to fold and get it. And so I said, if you could climb this continuous rope we have in the garage, if you could climb, 27,000 feet, basically, I want you to go up to like Everest on this rope. You can get it done in 7 hours. I'll get you a box. His hands were bleeding.
Oh my.
He got it done in 6 hours and like 55 minutes to get the
Oh, good
Xbox.
Lord.
Yeah. So kids will do
Well,
anything.
amen to him and having a I mean, this is a kid that has grit and has strength and stamina. So congrats and well done, Papa. The thing that I like about at least what I observe with my kids in the video games, it is more social, right? They're sitting there and and it's not the same as playing football in the backyard and those other things that are physical. But when I think about how they can be competitive and social and together with technology, I would rather have my kid playing Xbox with a bunch of buddies than sitting by himself watching, endless loops of TikTok.
Agreed. No, I agree. So look, we know what we have to do. How do people find you to get some more clues and tricks on how to do this?
Yeah, you bet. Well, the publishing business that I founded, we're a website called YourTango. So that's at yourtango.com. And we have content syndicated to MSN, Yahoo, Apple News, Smart News. So we're kind of all over the place with our distribution. And I happen to be starting a podcast called Open Relationships, Transforming Together. It's a little wink, wink, open relationships. We're open emotionally, right? So if you're like, ooh, ooh la la, there's a ooh la la, but it's not the kind of ooh la la you're expecting. But the key is transforming together, because I do believe passionately that the vast majority of challenges in our lives we're able to overcome through our connections with each other, whether it's professionally, we've got a big vision and a business, whether it's a book. Oh my gosh, my agent, my editor, I had somebody helping with research. My book is way better thanks to those people. We're better together, right? We really are. And so those are two ways. And the book that I referenced is called Radical Acceptance: The Secret to Happy Lasting Love by me, Andrea Miller. You can find that on Amazon or any major place where books are sold. And the premise of Radical Acceptance, it's really all about learning to replace judgment with compassion and empathy. And so, so I'm just going to go a little bit deeper here. So yes, that time together, putting our phones down and making time for connection, that's critical. But what I've seen in a lot of families and a lot of lives, even in my own life, okay, we've made time for connection, but oh goodness, we're being such jerks to each other. Hey, sit up straight, eat your vegetables, or we're being so hard on ourselves. So while making time for that disintermediated quality time without devices is critically important, and it fosters time for stories and so forth, I would also just urge your listeners and viewers, when they are together, it's like, how can they come together without judgment, without criticism? I've got a little open heart necklace. For me, it's all about being open-hearted. How can we really meet the people in our lives where they are, right? And I feel like that's really at the heart of all the work that I do. And I always say love, sort of love and change start with me. And I know as I do my work and I become more open-hearted and less critical and less judgmental, how it's transformed my marriage, how it's transformed my relationship with my kids, how it's caused my business to expand profoundly. I think it was the Citibank CEO who just said something to the effect of that empathy is actually a hard skill. And I thought, amen, right? We keep calling it a soft skill, like diminishing it. I mean, empathy is so profoundly important in any role we play. So yes, put those phones down, eat those meals together. But I guess I just want to urge everybody to, to when they're sitting down, to try to listen a little bit more, right? To try to maybe ask more questions, to just be a little bit more open-hearted and open-minded. And I feel like we're in such a rush world where it's like, oh, well, we don't have time for that. We got to get the kids to soccer, or I've got to get this work done. But that's back in my mind to really prioritizing and saying these relationships, especially with our kids. I happen to believe being a parent is the most, if you're a parent, that is the most important job you have. I run a business, But being a parent, in my opinion, and doing a great job in that role is my most important job. And so I've screwed it up plenty. So I think that's why I'm so passionate about it, is trying to learn from my mistakes and spend that time just saying, okay, guys, we're going to tune into each other here and be goofy and joyful, right? And not completely distracted.
I learned, I took a Psych 101 class. I was probably 18, 17 years old. And I remember distinctly, it changed my life when the professor said, listen, you're in a restaurant, you see the people next to you not leave a tip. Your immediate instinct is, what a jerk. But you don't know what happened for the hour in the restaurant beforehand. So please think twice before you rush to judgment. You know, you've got to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. How often have we heard something like that? So I would wrap this up by saying it's hard, but it's so easy if you use some sort of referencing device to say, wait a minute, I don't know the whole story. I don't know how tough that person's day was. I don't know, right? Like, I become friendly with a lot of wrestlers because my boys wrestle, and they just seem a lot more forgiving. They seem a lot more humble. And I suspect it's because they felt the pain, they felt the grind, they've done, so they can immediately say to themselves, that person's gone through hell, I've gone through, you know what I mean? They have an understanding.
Well, and that there's an intimacy there. I mean, when you think of wrestling, the way these bodies, my cousin was a wrestler. I've had good friends. I mean, there is an intimacy there and a human, like skin to skin contact. I don't know if they would describe it like that, but it does feel like there is something unique and profoundly humanizing about that experience. I bet it does change their perspective. That makes a lot of sense.
No phones while you wrestle. All right, you're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.